August 31, 1943, Task Force 15 over Marcus Island. F6F Hellcats roll from Essex-class decks into the Central Pacific darkness. Pratt and Whitney are 2,800 double Wasps Thunder with 2,000 horsepower each. The mission is surgical. Introduce America's newest carrier fighter to an enemy that has never seen one before. Commander James Flatley leads 18 F6F-3 Hellcats from Fighting Squadron VF-5 off USS Yorktown's flight deck at about 0420 hours before sunrise. Behind him, the war's most advanced carrier-based fighter cuts through Central Pacific air at roughly 380 miles per hour, about 50 to 60 miles per hour faster than the F4F-4 Wildcat it replaces. The Hellcat carries 650 caliber Browning machine guns loaded with 400 rounds per gun. 2,400 rounds of destruction waiting for whatever Imperial Japan has prepared on the coral atoll ahead. Marcus Island floats in the Central Pacific about 1,000 miles southeast of Tokyo. A strategic stepping stone barely 3 miles long, carved from coral and fortified with concrete. Naval intelligence reports indicated roughly 2,700 Japanese defenders from mixed Army and Navy units. Type 88 75mm anti-aircraft guns among the principal defenses. 20mm automatic weapons scattered throughout the installation. About 7 Mitsubishi G4M Betty bombers parked along the east-west runway. A weather station, radio facility, and garrison barracks clustered around a single airstrip supporting long-range reconnaissance and harassment of Allied outposts across the Central Pacific. The Japanese garrison had been watching American movements since 1942. The island's air defense officers kept their gunners trained on captured American aircraft recognition charts that showed F4F Wildcats, SBD Dauntless, and TBF Avengers. The defensive plan assumes these familiar silhouettes will approach from the east at dawn, following standard American carrier doctrine. Months of preparation, defensive positions plotted for maximum crossfire, ammunition stockpiled for extended engagement. What they cannot know is that the aircraft approaching their position is entering combat for the first time. Grumman's F6F Hellcat moved from design work in mid-1941 to first flight on June 26, 1942, incorporating lessons from early Pacific air combat and intelligence on the Zero. From prototype to carrier combat in about 14 months, and just over 2 years from project start, American industrial might compressed into a timeline that would reshape naval aviation. Task Force 15 represents Admiral Chester Nimitz's evolving doctrine of concentrated carrier power. 3 carriers operating as an integrated striking force rather than as isolated units. USS Essex, USS Yorktown, and USS Independence steam in formation roughly 150 miles northeast of Marcus Island. Rear Admiral Charles Pownall commands the task force from Essex's Flag Bridge, his first combat assignment despite decades of naval aviation experience. The raid will test not only the Hellcat but also America's matured carrier warfare concepts. Flatley's formation maintains radio silence as they approach the target. The sky above Marcus Island remains empty. Japanese air patrols fail to detect the American task force during its nighttime approach. No enemy fighters rise to challenge the incoming strike. Below, several Betty bombers sit motionless on the runway, their crews sleeping in barracks only a few hundred yards from the flight line. The first cardinal sin of wartime aviation: concentrating aircraft without proper dispersal or alert status. At 0510 hours, first light reveals Marcus Island's defensive layout to the approaching Americans. TBF Avengers begin their bombing runs against fuel storage tanks and radio installations. Heavy guns open fire from concealed positions, their muzzle flashes providing target reference points for orbiting Hellcats. A section of F6Fs rolls into diving attacks, gun sights centered on the northwestern gun position. 650 caliber streams converge on the emplacement, silencing the position within seconds of sustained fire. The Japanese defenders experience their first encounter with America's newest fighter. Through field glasses from bunkers and gun pits, the attacking aircraft appears larger than expected F4F Wildcats. Broader wings, more angular fuselage, different engine cowling configuration. The sound signature differs markedly from Wildcat encounters at Guadalcanal. Deeper, more powerful engine note suggesting significantly increased horsepower. The aircraft demonstrates superior climb and diving speed compared to previous American fighters. Bomber crews attempt an emergency scramble as Hellcats complete their anti-aircraft suppression mission. Personnel run across exposed tarmac toward their aircraft, ground crews frantically attempting to remove chocks and start engines. The Bettys represent Marcus Island's remaining offensive capability. Their destruction eliminates any prospect of immediate retaliation against Task Force 15. The first strafing runs slash across the parked bombers from about 500 feet, all 6 machine guns converging on the lead Betty. Armor-piercing incendiary rounds penetrate aluminum skin and ignite aviation gasoline. The bomber erupts in a fireball that spreads to adjacent aircraft. Within minutes, roughly 7 Bettys burn on the runway. Repeated strafing passes reduce the enemy air force to twisted metal and billowing smoke. The engagement demonstrates the Hellcats' fundamental superiority over earlier American fighters. Sustained diving attacks at speeds exceeding 400 miles per hour. Stable gun platform characteristics that allow accurate fire during high-G maneuvers. Rugged construction with armor and self-sealing tanks that shrug off light damage. Japanese gunners score hits on several Hellcats, only to watch the American fighters continue their attacks and return to their carriers. Japanese recognition of American tactical evolution occurs in real time. The attacking force employs coordination unseen in previous small raids. Fighters and bombers operating in integrated packages rather than independent missions. Precise timing between different aircraft types. Hellcats providing close escort for vulnerable torpedo bombers, then transitioning to ground attack roles after bomber withdrawal. The Americans demonstrate mastery of carrier aviation that surpasses Japanese capabilities developed during the early war period. A 20 mm anti-aircraft crew on the island's southern shore works its gun furiously. The team has trained extensively against simulated American attacks, achieving high accuracy rates during practice exercises. The engagement with actual Hellcats reveals fundamental flaws in Japanese defensive planning. American fighters approach from multiple directions simultaneously, overwhelming concentrated defensive fire. Individual gun positions cannot track fast-moving targets while under direct attack. The Hellcats coordinate their strafing runs to suppress anti-aircraft fire systematically. At 0545 hours, the American attack transitions to infrastructure targets. Hellcats strafe the pier facilities, radio towers, fuel storage areas, and administrative buildings. Each pilot conducts multiple attack runs, demonstrating the aircraft's reliability and ammunition capacity. Traditional carrier fighter doctrine allocated limited ammunition for ground attack missions. The Hellcat's 2,400 round capacity enables sustained strafing operations unusual for previous Wildcat engagements. The Japanese garrison witnesses American carrier aviation's technological leap in compressed time. Staff officers count attack runs from bunker positions, dozens of separate passes by American fighters. No forced withdrawals for mechanical failure observed. Despite moderate anti-aircraft fire, the attacking force maintains tactical formation throughout the engagement, underscoring aircraft reliability and pilot training. Task Force 15's withdrawal demonstrates additional tactical maturation. Hellcats maintain combat air patrol over the retiring American formation, ready to engage any pursuing Japanese aircraft.
No pursuit materializes.
Marcus Island's immediate air defense capability has been neutralized. The garrison retains small arms and surviving anti-aircraft guns but lacks any capacity for offensive operations against the American fleet. The engagement results reveal the Hellcats' combat debut impact. Several enemy bombers destroyed on the ground. Multiple anti-aircraft positions silenced. No American aircraft lost to enemy action. A few Hellcats sustain minor damage from anti-aircraft fire but return safely to their carriers. The kill ratio approaches infinity since no enemy aircraft achieved takeoff or engaged in aerial combat. Surviving Japanese reports describe American fighters with performance characteristics exceeding intelligence estimates. Superior speed, climbing ability, and firepower compared to known F4F Wildcats. The attacking aircraft demonstrated coordination and tactical sophistication, suggesting extensive training and improved command procedures. Japanese naval aviation intelligence begins reassessing American carrier fighter capabilities based on Marcus Island observations. The Hellcats' successful debut validates Grumman's design philosophy. Leroy Grumman's engineering team prioritized pilot survivability and ease of operation over maximum theoretical performance. Test pilots quipped the aircraft was designed to be flown by 200-hour farm boys' robust construction, forgiving flight characteristics, and massive firepower combined in a package that new pilots could master quickly. The F6F addressed fundamental weaknesses identified in F4F Wildcat operations while maintaining proven design elements. American pilot reactions to the Hellcats' combat performance establish immediate confidence in the new fighter. Commander Flatley's post-mission notes emphasize the aircraft's stability during gun runs and responsiveness during formation flying. The Hellcat demonstrates none of the early carrier landing difficulties that plagued the faster F4U Corsair. Naval aviators show a clear preference for the F6F in carrier operations despite the Corsair's superior straight-line speed. The Marcus Island raid initiates a shift in Pacific air warfare balance. Japanese intelligence officers recognize that American carrier aviation has achieved parity with Zero fighters while maintaining superior ruggedness and firepower. The Hellcats' introduction coincides with massive expansion of American carrier production. Essex-class carriers enter service in rapid succession, each carrying around 90 aircraft. The Japanese cannot match this production rate or pilot training throughput. Imperial Navy air commanders begin adjusting tactical doctrine based on Marcus Island lessons. American fighters no longer represent inferior opponents to be engaged in turning dogfights. The Hellcats' superior high-altitude performance and diving speed require defensive rather than offensive tactics. Japanese pilots receive new instructions emphasizing hit-and-run attacks rather than sustained aerial combat against American formations. Task Force 15's return to Pearl Harbor carries broader strategic implications. Admiral Nimitz's concentrated carrier doctrine proves effective in this early Central Pacific test. 3 carriers operating together generate striking power that overwhelms isolated enemy positions. The raid demonstrates American ability to project force throughout the Central Pacific using mobile carrier formations. Japanese defensive strategy based on fixed installations grows obsolete overnight. The Hellcats' Marcus Island debut establishes performance benchmarks that will define Pacific air warfare for the following 2 years. The aircraft will ultimately achieve an overall air-to-air kill-to-loss ratio on the order of 19-1 against Japanese opponents while accounting for roughly 3/4 of U.S. Navy air-to-air victories. These statistics begin accumulating at Marcus Island as the first Japanese garrison encounters America's newest fighter without warning or preparation. Grumman's production lines accelerate Hellcat delivery following successful combat trials. Plant number 3 at Bethpage, Long Island expands operations to meet increased Navy orders. By early 1945, workers complete roughly 1 Hellcat every hour around the clock. 12,275 aircraft roll off assembly lines during the war. American industrial capacity generates numerical superiority that Japanese manufacturers cannot approach. The psychological impact of Marcus Island extends beyond tactical considerations. Japanese defenders witness American technological advancement in real time. The attacking fighters demonstrate capabilities that exceed previous intelligence estimates. More importantly, the Americans display coordination and tactical sophistication, suggesting systematic improvement rather than isolated advancement. The raid indicates that American naval aviation has evolved beyond its 1942 limitations. Fighter Squadron VF-5's Hellcats land aboard USS Yorktown at about 0730 hours, completing the aircraft's combat introduction. Flight deck crews immediately begin refueling and rearming procedures for potential follow-up strikes. The Hellcat demonstrates carrier compatibility that exceeds F4F Wildcat operations. Faster deck cycling and reliable systems enable higher sortie rates from existing carrier platforms. Admiral Pownall's message to VF-5 pilots captures the raid's significance. Congratulations on a bang-up job well done. You have marked Marcus' face so badly, Tojo won't recognize him for a long time. The comment reflects American confidence in their new fighter and evolving carrier warfare capabilities. The Hellcat represents technological achievement that shifts Pacific air power balance permanently in America's favor. Japanese strategic planners recognize that Marcus Island marks a fundamental change in American capabilities. The raid demonstrates improved fighter performance, enhanced carrier coordination, and increased tactical sophistication. Japanese air defense strategy requires complete revision to address these developments. Traditional defensive concepts based on superior fighter performance no longer apply against American carrier formations equipped with Hellcats. The engagement establishes patterns that will characterize subsequent Pacific air battles. American fighters achieve immediate air superiority through superior performance and growing numerical advantage. Japanese defensive positions suffer systematic destruction from coordinated air attacks. Enemy air forces face elimination rather than merely tactical defeat. The Hellcat enables American carrier aviation to achieve decisive rather than marginal victories. Staff officers on Marcus count the cost of their first Hellcat encounter. About 7 aircraft destroyed without inflicting any losses on attacking forces. Multiple defensive positions eliminated. Communications equipment damaged. The garrison retains capability for ground defense but loses all offensive potential. The raid transforms Marcus Island from strategic asset to isolated outpost. Fighter Squadron VF-5 begins preparing for subsequent operations against Japanese positions throughout the Central Pacific. The Hellcat's successful debut enables expanded target selection and increased mission complexity. American carrier task forces can now engage heavily defended positions with confidence in their fighter escort capability. The F6F removes constraints that limited earlier offensive operations. The Marcus Island raid concludes with American forces withdrawing beyond Japanese retaliation range.
No enemy pursuit develops.
No retaliatory strikes threaten Task Force 15. The engagement demonstrates complete American tactical superiority that renders Japanese countermeasures ineffective. The Hellcat's introduction marks the beginning of systematic American air superiority throughout the Pacific theater. Combat evaluation reports filed by VF-5 pilots establish baseline performance data for future Hellcat operations. The aircraft meets or exceeds design specifications during actual combat conditions. Reliability, firepower, and handling characteristics prove superior to earlier American fighters while matching or exceeding Japanese capabilities. The F6F validates American aircraft design philosophy that prioritizes pilot survival and mission effectiveness over fragile maximum performance designs. The Hellcat's debut at Marcus Island represents more than successful weapons testing. The engagement demonstrates American recovery from early war defeats and technological inferiority. The F6F embodies industrial capacity, engineering sophistication, and tactical innovation that will drive subsequent American victories. Japanese recognition of these developments begins at Marcus Island as their garrison experiences America's newest fighter for the first time. One surviving gun crewman recognizes fundamental changes in Pacific air warfare. American fighters no longer represent manageable opponents for experienced Japanese pilots. The Hellcat demonstrates capabilities that negate traditional Japanese tactical advantages. Future engagements will require defensive rather than offensive thinking. The initiative in Pacific air combat has shifted permanently to American forces. The sun sets over Marcus Island, revealing an installation stripped of offensive capability. About 7 destroyed bombers mark the Hellcat's entry into Pacific combat. The F6F has announced its presence through systematic destruction of enemy air power. Tomorrow will bring additional raids as American carrier aviation exploits its new technological advantage. The age of American air superiority begins at Marcus Island with the thunder of 18 Hellcat engines cutting through Pacific darkness. Task Force 15 steams towards subsequent targets, carrying the war's most advanced carrier fighter toward its destiny. The Hellcat will go on to destroy over 5,000 enemy aircraft while losing only about 270 in air-to-air combat. This remarkable achievement begins at Marcus Island, where Japanese defenders first encounter America's answer to the Zero. The F6F represents American determination to achieve not merely parity but decisive superiority in Pacific air warfare. The Marcus Island garrison settles into defensive positions as American carriers disappear beyond the horizon. They have witnessed the introduction of a weapon that will reshape Pacific air combat. The Hellcats' debut marks the end of Japanese air superiority and the beginning of systematic American advancement toward Tokyo Bay. The war has fundamentally changed in the span of a single morning's combat.